Let's talk a little bit about Jerome. Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, Caroline Leavitt, the President of the United States, they've decided to go squarely at him now. Yesterday at the press conference, Caroline brought a chart out of all the nation's interest rates, and Donald Trump had scrawled a message on it as she held it up. 27.19. Here we go.
At the top is Switzerland. They're only paying a quarter for interest rates. Cambodia, Japan, Denmark, Thailand, Botswana, Barbados, Taiwan, Bulgaria, Cuba, Sweden, Morocco, Cabo Verde, South Korea, Algeria, Canada, Albania, Libya, Malaysia, China, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, Czechia, Bolivia, Australia, Costa Rica, the Bahamas, Kuwait, Papua New Guinea, Bosnia, United Kingdom, and the UAE are all paying lower interest rates than the United States of America, which has one of the hottest and strongest economies in the world. The president sent this note to the Fed chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation. And the president is right. There is historically low inflation thanks to his policies.
Right. And yesterday, a huge day, 27-24. I mean, imagine if things are this good now and Jerome, too late Jerome, is keeping interest rates artificially high. Imagine how much better they could be than this. Listen.
Well, stocks ending the day with the S&P and NASDAQ closing at record highs again. That's as financials and communication services led the gains 2 days in a row now of record closes. The Dow still about 2% from its last all-time high. For the month, the Dow rallied more than 4%, the S&P 5%, and the NASDAQ more than 6%. Today is also the end of the quarter, with the S&P posting its best quarter since December of 2023. It's also the end of the first half, and Treasuries posted their best first half stretch in 5 years.
And then there's this in 27-30, all that revenue that's pouring in from Trump's tariff policies that were sure to tank the economy and haven't yet.
How much we've been collecting in revenues. And I did this in part because Wilfred's here and he can talk about the UK trade deal. But just this is the monthly numbers. And they have gone up a lot. June is actually set for another big increase of $27 billion. That is money coming into U.S. coffers from tariffs. We are collecting a lot of revenue. So far, guys, $121 billion has flowed into the U.S. government since the start of the fiscal year. It's still a tiny portion of the overall revenues that the U.S. government gets, but it's increasingly a lot, especially we haven't seen it in terms of the consumer paying off higher inflation.
So Jerome Powell claims we can't lower interest rates because we don't know, and principally, he said, we don't know what Trump's tariff policies are going to do to the economy yet. So we got to keep close to the vest here on lowering interest rates. Well, there you go. You just heard it. You just saw it. No, what we know is Jerome Powell is a political actor. He has an agenda. This is about our families. This is about our homes. This is about our future. September 2024, inflation 2.7%. It's now 2.4%. And Powell cut rates at that time from 5.25 to 4.75. If you go back and look it up, in September, heading into the election, with cackle britches on the ballot, he cut rates and cut interest rates, and inflation was higher than it is now. Now, why did he do that? Of course, to support the husk and cackle britches. It was an in-kind political donation, is another way to think about it. Jerome Powell has long established this history of being tied to Democrat insiders and trying to benefit them. So now here we have inflation at 2.4-ish. Oil prices are dropping now to $64, $63 a barrel and plunging. No tariff-induced price spikes. And Powell has kept interest rates at something like 4.25 to 4.5. Now, inaction on this is calculated. And it's calculated, in my estimation, to hurt Donald Trump, first and foremost, but more importantly, hurt you and me, the American public. This stuff hits us where we live. And this is where I said yesterday on social media, it's just a gentle criticism. Gentle. I really do appreciate what Caroline pointed out on that chart and what President Trump is saying about Jerome Powell and pointing out that other interest rates in other countries are much lower. I do appreciate that, but I do kind of wish maybe there'd be a little more explanation as to why interest rates being lowered are critically important. And if you take a look at the housing market, that is Exhibit A. I talk a lot about housing market here. Home sales dropped by 2% in April of this year. And it's the lowest on record since 1995. $700 billion in unsold homes, clogging up the market. 44% of these homes are sitting on the market for over 60 days now. Median home prices, meanwhile, have risen by 3%. 30-year mortgages now sit at just under 7%. And if you're a first-time home buyer, you're sitting it out. You can't afford it. And this is what I do wish. You know, I was talking about younger people a minute ago. People in their 20s and 30s, maybe thinking about getting into the housing market for the first time, they don't dare. And a huge component of it is artificially high interest rates. The reluctance of people to sell because of interest rates so high. Yeah, maybe they cash their equity out, but they don't want to buy a new one because they don't want to get into a, they've got a 2-something% interest rate now. Maybe I've got right at an even 3. I sell my house today and I go to a 7% interest rate. No thanks. So families are stuck with mortgage rates of 5 and 6%, and they're paying around $2,800 a month on a $400,000 home. No hope of refinancing. And that's not to speak of Democrat areas that are reassessing their property values and hiking up their taxes to boot. That's why that SALT tax is so important to Republicans in high-tax states. And this damage goes well beyond housing, by the way. It threatens our whole future as a country. Housing alone doesn't define a crisis, but it's the survival of the country at large. We're facing a $37 trillion deficit. We need significant economic growth to keep Social Security and Medicare solvent. Lowering rates to 3%, just lowering the rate to 3%, could save billions annually on interest payments. Experts say something like a 1% rate cut could slash like $370 billion from our interest burden over a decade. Powell's his refusal to move off of this interest rate, it's costing all of us every single day. Social Security and Medicare are projected to go bankrupt by 2035 unless the economy is stimulated. And Congress, of course, has to curb its overspending as well, but that's another matter. The housing market is hugely important to all of this. It generates jobs and construction and tax revenue, and yet Powell is squeezing that housing market with these interest rates he refuses to move off of because of, well, politics. Congress completely ignoring the problem. Powell exacerbating the problem. Meanwhile, you and me are burdened with high mortgage payments and stagnant home sales and lost opportunities. So President Trump has demonstrated time and again, I just laid it out for you right off the top, his policies will and already have supercharged the economy, and that's in spite of Jerome Powell and in spite of Congress. So now Powell, he refuses to cut rates, and it's not done out of a thoughtful economic decision. It's an attack on Trump's legacy. He hopes to derail next year's midterms. Make book on it. Trump calls him too late Jerome Powell. Well, he is too late, but now he was too late in raising rates previously when he lowered them for the Husk and Cackle Britches to help their political survival. Now he's too late in lowering them. President Trump is fully aware of our nation's July 4th birthday. And he's pressuring the Senate and the House to deliver on this one big, beautiful bill by the nation's birthday. He'd love to give the nation several birthday gifts by the 4th of July. And he's trying to pressure Jerome Powell to be another one of those gifts. Powell's heretofore been pretty stubborn about that, of course, and not willing to play ball. But it's a shame. Because if the economy is roaring, as I've just displayed and laid out for you right off the top, imagine what it would be if interest rates were lowered. Imagine 3% on mortgage rates again. Imagine how homes would fly again. It's frustrating. Trump's frustrated, and I don't know. In time, you may see him move on Powell and fire him, which I believe he can do, but probably not going to do because, you know, no kings or whatever. He's still mindful of the optics of that. Now, as for the mega bill in the Senate, we haven't gotten into that yet. And some of you are already reaching out to me saying, what about Elon? What about Elon? As I said about Elon the last time, and as I always like to encourage you, deep breath, don't panic.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.